Okay, so let's see. I think it's Tuesday the 14th of May. I'm using my phone to make this video. I also have it's a kind of nice Sony HX20V digital camera. Previous one was an FE46 made by Olympus. Anyway, recently I've been watching some debates and discussions and talks by a guy named Stephen Law. That's Stephen, Stephen Law. And I saw him talking to Peter Atkins, and I saw him debating William Lane Craig. Asshole! William Lane Craig, asshole! Those two phrases to go together. Anyway, Stephen Law was a bit less of an asshole. And then I think I heard William Lane Craig talking to Lawrence Krauss also, or no, it was Stephen Law talking to Richard Dawkins, maybe not Lawrence Krauss. And the big thing that Peter Atkins talks about is how philosophy is largely a waste of time, just kind of intellectual exercises that can lead you nowhere, and just word games that can kind of help you get stuck in the mire. And I could basically see, how you have valid points on both sides. You can get stuck in the mire with philosophy, worrying about, you can't get an ought from an is, and whatever. Just because some dude thinks of something doesn't mean it's valid, and sounds pretty, it sounds logical. Well, yeah. My coffee cups are rattling in the back. But that doesn't mean that whatever idea they came up with is valid. Excuse me for a moment. I'll try to address my rattling coffee cup situation. Okay. Sam Harris has talked about how this ought is thing is kind of bogus. And I've listened to some other atheist debates, atheist and Christian debates, and some of the people, they start throwing out these, philosophy terms, and it's clear that they spent more than a few months studying the usage of those terms, philosophical terms, and debating terms, and whatnot. And but then they kind of lose the audience, because you're essentially reverting into language that people don't really understand what you mean. You gotta define even the ought is thing. You need to define what the hell it is you mean, and phrases like teleological and ontological. Yeah, it's true that if you went to most any university in Britain, you'd probably understand what those mean, but you got to also deal with the people who went to just some small community college in a small podunk cow town. They probably didn't learn what teleological, ontological, and ought is stuff, what those mean. So, if you're going to do a debate, you should define what you mean in all cases, rather than just relying on those terms. Then people will be able to understand what the hell it is you're talking about. But anyway, back to Stephen Law. Basically, he was having a discussion with Peter Atkins, and Atkins said, "Well, you shouldn't really ask why was the universe created, because," and Lawrence Krauss has commented about this too, that every why question is really just a how question. And I guess that's true to some extent, or maybe a lot of extent, but maybe not 100% extent. Why was the universe created? Now, when you make that conceit or that admission, then the people who want to believe in God of one type or another, and people like basic pretentious assholes like Krista Tippett and the Templeton Foundation kooks, Templeton Foundation kooks, they'll come on and say, well, hey, that means the Bible is true because you admitted that the universe may have had a meaning to its existence. Oh, excuse me while I sneezed there. Anyway, so did the universe have a meaning to its, does the universe have meaning? Well, we have this anthropic principle deal where we wouldn't be around if the conditions weren't there to allow us to exist, then we wouldn't exist. That's basically the anthropic principle. So, and it's true that when you think about the scope and the scale of the universe, that we're kind of like, it's kind of synonymous with, looking at an ant colony and people, the little ants doing their little things, and they have no idea what goes on outside their little colony, and they scurry around and do their tasks and stuff. That's kind of a similar situation to us, except that we might be the type of ant that might be able to get out of our colony if we manage to survive and not kill ourselves and stuff like that. So that's why I think on a some people might say separate, but maybe it's related note, that it's good to have more manned space missions, not just fucking robots going places. People say, oh, let's save money and we can get a lot more science done if we just do the robots to Mars, and robots everywhere, robot this, robot that. Well, robot this and robot that doesn't account for the fact that we need to find a way to live on other places, unless you want to re-engineer the sun. The funeral talk that I gave at my mother's funeral talked about this, about how our sun is going to become a lot hotter in the future. And so, when that happens, the oceans will boil off, And anyway, the sun's going to get hotter. This is way before it expands and, engulfs the Earth, and maybe will engulf Mars or not. We'll see. Way before all that, the sun's just going to get plain hotter. In 500 million years, it may be 10% hotter, and that's enough to boil off the oceans. So what do you want to do? You want to put something up in the atmosphere to block the sun? Oh, I guess we could do that. Or maybe re-engineer the sun, put some sort of a special bomb inside that helps it last longer. Who knows? And are we destined to go extinct? Well, we'll probably keep evolving. And stuff, and changing, so... But, there'll probably be some intelligent species on Earth. They may not be exactly like us, but maybe similar, But whatever, they'll still be our progeny, most likely. If we're not so stupid to be caught up with all our little trivialities of religion or pop culture, or what happens in the National Enquirer or People magazine, or on what passes for news on cable news most days. All that trivial bullcrap stuff that really we shouldn't care one little tidbit about. So, anyway, back to Stephen Law. I think that, I think it's inappropriate to tell people what questions they should not ask. And that science should be about asking all questions, including why questions, even if they're inconvenient. And even if why questions are maybe actually how questions, that's okay. But why questions, anyway, don't tell people that they shouldn't ask questions. So I disagree with Atkins on that. We should be asking all the questions. Are there ghosts? Probably not. Does your God exist? Probably not. Unless you think like me and think that the only God worth worshiping is sex. Then your God exists. But otherwise, let's be honest about the God term. And just kind of drop it, or just always give the caveat of what we're talking about so that people don't think we're talking about the Jesus God or the Mormon God or others, or the Islamic God who tortures people in hell forever for not kissing his ass. So anyway, that's my commentary for today. Have fun.